Okay, so to get started this morning, so we have, Tim had actually printed out some of these Wednesday night and had them, and I forgot to mention it. Does anybody need any of the 3-cycle outlines? We have a few of those in the back. If anybody needs one of those, if you can raise your hand, Wes or Lorenzo will get them to you. Also, maybe doing a little bit of map work this morning if we get to it and if we have time. It will be the map that is the closer in shot of Israel map. So if you have that, you can add to it. If not, we can bring you another one of those as well if anybody needs that. There's also the Egypt map, or the one that includes Egypt as well. So if anybody needs that, raise your hand. But looks like got one over here. You need an outline or map? Map. Okay, so the Israel map. Anybody else? Okay. So as we get started this morning, so on this slide, just adding the Exodus and Wandering that we had that we covered last time. We're going to continue with our summary lessons that we're doing. So, whoops, I just blinked it out. Okay, so where we left off last time was setting us up for the invasion and conquest. And so we had conquered Sihon, conquered Og. We're coming up on the east side of the Jordan and going to come and land right across from Jericho to begin the invasion and conquest. And so there from that view, we're going to be right here just above the Dead Sea. And everything that we're doing today, invasion and conquest, and the judges, all going to be in the central Israel portion there. Okay. So with our timeline slides that we typically hit, so this has been the same for the past couple classes, and it's going to be the same until we get down to United Kingdom, which will be next class. But invasion and conquest and period of the judges are the two Bible events that we're going to be hitting here. And so again, same as last couple classes, same world events are in view here. And this map's getting a little bit dated. I should probably update this to be a little bit along where we are. But those are the two timeline slides for where we are, 1500 to 1000 BC range. But as with these summary review classes, hitting these particular periods. So it's going to be the conquest and the judges today. And as we look at and think about, these concepts and messages. So with invasion and conquest, so the narratives with it continue to build on the foundation of the Exodus and the wandering. And but one way you can think about that's a little bit different is that it's not just God delivering Israel now, but He's actually helping them in conquest. So we're going to acquire and conquer land now, going to take the land. But some similar messages that are still there. God is all powerful. So some of the things we're going to be doing today is we're going to be stopping the waters of the Jordan. We're going to be making the walls of Jericho fall. So there's still things, big things like that happening that no doubt is telling you that God is in control. So it's a central and core message there with the narrative. Also, left this point on there from last time that God has a plan for His people, and it can work at multiple levels. So whether we're talking big narrative items like the invasion and conquest and period of judges we're covering today, whether we're talking about specific movements of the people or things like taking Jericho, those episodes and stories, or whether we're talking about the individual that God is dealing with, whether it be Joshua, Moses, on an individual level. So He's making it work for His people and His timeline at multiple levels, all rolling up into the big picture that's making all of this happen as He desires. Another point for this morning is that so the locational things are changing a little bit. And what I mean by that is that we're getting into a level of detail that we haven't had before up to this point. So we're talking about cities, we're talking about boundary areas, especially if we're talking about dividing up the land. Some very specific geographic descriptions that we're going to have now. And what's a little bit interesting, kind of funny about that is that so now with the geography, don't get lost in the geography, right? Because there's going to be a lot of it. A lot of it is known, some of it is still unknown. So, and we'll look at that in some examples this morning, because it's somewhat a reverse of what the issue we've had up to this point. Because up to this point, a lot of places are general. We've been looking at general areas. The landscapes I've been showing us generally what this area may look like. We may roughly know some routes, and there's some routes they would have taken just because it's really one of the only few ways you could have went. But just say that all that to say that some of this is going to get pretty specific, and it's going to be very helpful to tell the stories, and you'll see what I mean by that as we go on. So, and most of that is in the view of conquest. But if we're talking judges, The main concept and message there is the cycle of the judges. So that cycle of apostasy, oppression, repentance, deliverance, and peace that we'll look at as well on the outline. But if we're talking that cycle 3 layer list in scriptures of details, and this is what you'll see if you look in the outline. So it would be for the conquest. So you have your different campaigns. So central, southern, and northern campaign. And just the easy way to think about that is, come across in the middle, down and up. Middle, down and up. And then after that, the land is going to be divided among the tribes. The tribes that are going back over to the east side of the Jordan, the Transjordan area, are going to go home. And then you have the speeches of Joshua. And then the scriptures we put with that is Joshua 4 down to Joshua 24. If we're looking at the judges, the third cycle list for that is the list of the judges, the 15 judges. And of course, the scriptures where that occurs is going to be in Judges, obviously. And then also Ruth, and then down into 1 Samuel, down to 1 Samuel 10. But we're going to be starting off with invasion and conquest. So when thinking about invasion and conquest and looking for a good summary map for it, it's kind of hard to find because there's a few things that you want to show, but there's also some things you kind of need to zoom in on. Because, in my mind, as we're beginning invasion and conquest, when you're conquering Sihon, conquering Og, if you trace that back and you've come from Kadesh Barnea area, the wilderness area, so you're coming from this area here. So realize that's not the start of the invasion and conquest as we have it in the list, but in my mind, it does kind of go back there. So you want a map that would kind of show this area, so that way you can get that view of you coming around the bottom of the Dead Sea, but then also coming up through, doing the conquering Sihon, conquering Og, as we keep saying. But then also, as you come back down to across the Jordan from Jericho and are going to come across, everything is going to be taking place here in the central Israel area. And when I say central, I just mean, of this whole region, the central area of Israel, not meaning the central campaign, because that's a very thin slice, right? Just it's going to happen right in there. But I think this map is a good view for that, even though it's labeled Exodus. And then, this is just another map to show this as well. And what I like about this map is that it shows the extents of what was described as the Promised Land. So this, area in green would be those extents. And of course, how well you can see that, but just for reference, Dead Sea, Sea of Galilee, and so it goes up quite a bit more than we typically think about it being. But then also you have the areas east of the Jordan there that were annexed as well. So that's just another good map view for that. Okay, so here what we're going to do is kind of reset up where we were at the end of last class. And kind of want to do 3 things from this point forward for this morning. So one is we're going to do this reset up of ending the wandering. And one reason I want to do this is because there's a specific spot, the blue dot on the map, that I want to talk about, where you can see 4 fairly distinct landscapes from this view. And just talk about why I like that and why I think that's significant. We're also going to look at 2 conquest scriptures and talk about some of the locations that are covered in them, and just not covering all conquest stuff, but just giving some good examples of some of the geographic detail that we have and how it can help you talk through the storyline. Also going to look at a couple of the judges, particularly ones that are associated with the Jezreel Valley, and look at some Jezreel Valley things to help us understand some of the geography there in the Jezreel Valley. Not all the judges' narratives take place there, but a lot of them do, and it becomes a very critical point from this point forward in the scriptures as well. So I want to talk about that. So that's kind of the 3 main things that we're going to do this morning. So starting off with this map. So what I was wanting to show here is that, so Dead Sea there, bottom of the Dead Sea here. So Kadesh Barnea area is going to be over this direction. Wilderness of Zin, and I realize, if you're about halfway back where you can't really read labels at all. Actually, if you're really close, you might not can read it at all. It's pretty small. But Wilderness of Zin there. Wilderness of Zin actually does creep around up into the Jordan Valley. And that's part of what we're going to see here in these photos that we're about to look at. But what this series of photos is going to do, so we're going to have one view. Of course, the first view is going to be kind of in this area in general, just to kind of get us in a transition over to this spot. The spot is called the Scorpion's Path, and it's just a name that it's had since about the 2nd century AD. Rome gave it that name. It's just been referenced as that ever since. So first picture is going to be from this area in general. The next 4 or 5 photos after that are going to be looking in different directions from this point. So the first one is going to be looking up toward the Negev area. The second one is going to be looking up toward the wilderness of Judea area. Third one is going to be looking out across the Jordan Valley here. And again, keep in mind we're Jordan Valley, but south of the Dead Sea. And then the last one is going to be almost looking directly south, kind of at the edge of the Jordan Valley. So again, this first photo is not from the blue dot, but to a little bit left of that. And so, think about Kadesh Barnea. We looked at some of the photos from that general area and it looked a little bit different from this. It was over a little bit more to the west. This is moving a little bit further east, closer to the Scorpion's Pass area, but just to give you a transition feel. Okay, so this is the Scorpion's Path itself. So, and you can see why it's named that, the mean looking road that it is coming down. Very fun to drive down. There's some parking up here at the top. And so I said you can see this from one point, and really you can't. You actually have to walk about 100 yards because you're walking over a crest to get some of these different shots that we're going to see here. But anyway, making the pictures from up here in this area. So first photo is where we talked about, so from where the blue dot was, we're looking up north and west into the Negev area. And so in other pictures you see of the Negev, it'll look just a little bit different. We're kind of in a transitional area, but for the most part, rolling hills, but barren. But just that's kind of a feel for the Negev, at least the Negev as you see it from where we are at this point. Okay, so that was looking up this way. So now we're going to look pretty much directly north, and essentially from the same spot, and this is on that top part of the ridge I was describing. So you're looking at wilderness of Judea area. Kind of a feel for what it looks like. Okay, now this next shot is going to be looking directly east across the Jordan. I said across the Jordan Valley, not the Jordan River at this point, because it's ended at the Dead Sea. But you can see the ground, so that's ground level that we're standing on right there, but then right there is the drop off. And so you're looking out across Jordan Valley. And I said that the wilderness of Zin seems to creep up into the Jordan Valley a little bit. So you may remember from Wednesday night. So the photos of the wilderness of Zin, and if you could see this up closer and clearer, more like it is on the monitor back there, you would get a sense that it looks similar, a little bit different, but similar. And then this next shot, so you're kind of still looking at the same thing. So this was turning, you're looking south now. But what I want you to see here is that drop off of the Jordan Valley. And this is, so those first few photos were from the parking spot up a little bit higher. Had to walk over the ridge just a little bit to get these last two shots. And so, this is one of my favorite spots from the perspective of, this is one spot you can stand, look at 4 landscape areas like this, and know that when children of Israel and other people who had been moving around in this area at the time, if they're traveling through, if they're coming from Kadesh Barnea area, Sinai area, coming around under the Dead Sea and going up and around, you're essentially in one spot there where you can look around and you're going to see a landscape that they would have walked through. And I think that's fascinating. I love this. This is one of my favorite spots. And actually from that view that was looking north, so that view there, if you had a little bit higher vantage point and if you turn just a little bit to the left, you would actually be able to, not see very well, but in the distance, you would actually be able to see Judean hills. So almost 5 landscape areas, that they would have been traveling in or seeing or interacting with at some point that you can see from this one spot. So that's why this is one of my favorites. Okay, and just to quickly hit, and so these are photos you've seen before, but I'm showing them over again on purpose so you can keep them in your mind what they look like. So we're going to cross over and be at Bozrah, which I think is right there. It's one of those two. It's kind of hard to see. But then and then move up into the area of Moab. And so this is the photos that you've seen before, looking at Bozrah from a distance there on that outcrop. The view from there, if you're looking back west toward the Jordan Valley area. And then that view of Moab that's coming from, about right in there, looking back this direction. And then after that, going up, Sihon and Og, and then coming back down to across from Jericho. And so that's where it puts us here, starting at Jericho. Okay, so what we're going to look at here is a couple photos that the perspectives on them are going to be, so the side of Jericho right here, but you can see the hills right there getting up into Way of the Wilderness path there. So we're going to be looking at some shots that are going to be looking across over the Jordan Valley, and a couple of shots. So one's going to look straight across, one is going to be looking north and westerly just a little bit, and there's going to be a video that's essentially going to pan all of this to give you a feel for what that looks like. Oh, and that's just a shot of the ancient the ancient Mound of Jericho. And so this is looking north. It's a little bit oblong, so it kind of goes there in the distance just a little bit, but that's the site there. And what you're seeing there is just that's an excavation trench from an excavation from years ago. You can see some of the other archaeological work there, walls that's been uncovered, and different things like that. But that's just a view of the tell. So the shot that we're about to look at is coming from the west side, left side, going up over on some hills, mountains to the left. And that's the view there. So the tail in the video will show this in just a moment. So that's going to be the tail right there, the hill of Jericho. But you're looking out across the Jordan Valley. So very, very, very flat. You can see a long way to the Jordan, which is there. And that's that shot looking north just a little bit. And this video is going to pan. So it's going to pan through that, but it's also going to focus in on the site a little bit, go back and forth a little bit on it so you can see it and get a feel for it, and then it's going to pan up, look at if somebody were to be coming across to you. So it's starting north, panning and going south. Dead Sea is going to be right there in that area. We're about to stop and zoom in on the tail. And now just kind of looking up and over through the Jordan Valley. And, so right there and up, so that, that's the Transjordan Plateau side. That's where the Jordan Valley is coming back up on that side. Okay, so all that has been looking east across the Jordan Valley. From this point, well, not this point, if you're, this next shot is going to be from down on the tail itself. If you're looking directly behind you and you're looking at where this photo is being shot from, looks like that. Okay, so those hills are very close there. Very close. Okay, so just play along with me for just a moment on this. So we've just looked at what we've had, and so your job is to go in and spy out this city. So, and you got to be, so you're going to have a partner. It's going to be two of you. You're going to be guys. You have to be guys for this story to work out right. So me and you, or you and your pew buddy, you're going to go spy out this land. So you get there to the city, and they have good operational security and intelligence running. You're in the city, and they have already figured out that you're there while you are there. So you've got to make an escape. So let's think about this. If we're going to try to get away, got to make an escape. They're going to come looking for you, and they're not looking for you to come and get you and bring you back and serve you hot tea. They're going to most likely cut off your head at some point. So how are we going to address this? I would like to keep my head on. I assume you do too. So how and where are you going to escape to? And again, you know the story. You know where I'm going with this. But if I'm looking at, if I can click the right direction, if I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at that, what are my options for getting away quickly and having to hide somewhere? So show of hands, who's going to go west? Not this direction, but the other way. I keep clicking the wrong way. Who's going to go that way? Anybody? You can. There may be a reason for it. Anybody? How many of people are going this way? I don't see almost any hands. Are you just going to stay? I wouldn't stay there. I wouldn't do that. That would be a bad idea. If you're with me, I'm going to suggest we go this way. And again, you know the story and you see the point I'm trying to make. But when you see this, and if you want to, you can be opening to Joshua chapter 2. So we're actually going to read Joshua chapter 2 after seeing this and kind of going through this. Because when I saw this for the first time, seeing it from these perspectives and then reading Joshua chapter 2, you see it differently. So Joshua chapter 2. And Joshua, the son of Nun, sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, "Go, view the land." And this is from the ESV version, by the way. "Go view the land, especially Jericho." And they went and came to the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and lodged there. And it was told to the king of Jericho, "Behold, men of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land." Then the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, "Bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come out to search out all the land." But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them, and she said, "True, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And when the gate was about to be closed at dark, the men went out. I do not know where the men went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them." But she had brought them up to the roof and hid them with the stalks of flax that she had laid out in order on the roof. So the men pursued after them on the way to the Jordan as far as the fords, crossings of the Jordans, not the trucks, crossing at the Jordan. The gate was shut as soon as the pursuers had gone out. Before the men lay down, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, "I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you devoted to destruction. And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that as I have dealt kindly with you, you will also deal kindly with my father's house, and give me a sign that you will save alive my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death." And the men said to her, "Our life for yours, even to death, if you do not tell this business of ours. When the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you." She let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was built into the city wall, so that she lived in the wall. And she said to them, "Go into the hills, or the pursuers will encounter you, and hide there 3 days until the pursuers have returned. Then afterward you may go your way." The men said to her, "We will be guiltless with respect to this oath of yours, if you have made us swear that you have made us swear. Behold, when we come into the land, you shall tie the scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and you shall gather into your house your father and your mother, your brothers, and all your father's household. Then if anyone goes out of the doors of your house into the street, his blood shall be upon his own head, and we shall be guiltless. But if a hand is laid on anyone who is with you in the house, his blood shall be on our head. But if you tell this business of ours, then we shall be guiltless with respect to your oath that you have made us swear." Then she said, "According to your words, so be it." Then she sent them away and departed, and she tied the scarlet cord in the window. They departed and went into the hills and remained there 3 days until the pursuers returned. And the pursuers searched all along the way and found nothing. Then the 2 men returned. They came down from the hills and passed over and came to Joshua the son of Nun and told him all that had happened to them. And they said to Joshua, "Truly the Lord has given all the land into our hands, and also all the inhabitants of the land melt away because of us." Okay, so tracking back to a few verses there, still thinking about this. So back in verse 7, and I think I copied this from the New King James, so I might read a little different. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads out to the fords of the Jordan. As soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. So that's verse 7. Verse 15, so she let them down by a rope through the window, for the house she lived in was part of the city wall. She said to them, go to the hills, so the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourselves there 3 days until they return, and then go on your way. Verse 22, when they left, they went into the hills, stayed there 3 days until the pursuers had searched all along the road and returned without finding them. Then the two men started back. They went down out of the hills, forded the river, and came to Joshua, son of Nun, and told them everything that had happened to them. Okay, so you know the rest of the story with this. They took Jericho by marching around the walls, following God's other instructions for this. But, think about, what you see here, what was given about these geographical details, and just how when you read through it, it's not a question of which direction they went. The way the descriptions are is very obvious. They went and hid in these hills. They did that because the pursuers went the other way. So it's just, you don't read this and read these details and sit here in the spot and wonder what happened there. You can tell the author knew the land, what they were writing about, and the views that they had there. So, and that part's not the most critical point of the story, right? It's that they followed God's instructions. But there again, you're getting this level of detail where you can tell these kind of stories that help it. You can just help see it so much clearer. So with that, so let's move on and begin taking the rest of the land, and let's turn over to chapter 10. So Joshua 10. And I'm going to read verses 9 through 15. Okay, and so the setup for this is people of Gibeon had made an alliance with the children of Israel. King in Jerusalem found out about it, built a coalition, and so they're going to go make war against Gibeon. And so that's the setup for this, but then picking up in verse 9 of chapter 10. So Joshua came upon them suddenly, having marched all night up from Gilgal, and the Lord threw them into a panic before Israel, who struck them with a great blow at Gibeon and chased them by the way of the ascent of Beth-horon, and struck them as far as Azekah and Makkedah. As they fled before Israel while they were going down the ascent of Beth-horon, the Lord threw down large stones from heaven on them as far as Azekah, and they died. There were more who died because of the hailstones than the sons of Israel killed with the sword. At that time Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the sons of Israel, and he said in the sight of Israel, sun, stand still at Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the nation took vengeance on their enemies. Is this not written in the book of Jasher? And the sun stopped in the midst of the heaven, and did not hurry to set for about a whole day. There had been no day like it before or since, when the Lord heeded the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. So Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. Okay, and I meant to click over to that map. So that map, so this is showing the central campaign and southern campaign. I'm going to zoom in on this just a little bit there. And so what I want to show with this is just the list of places. So Gilgal, which is now off the map just a little bit over on this side, and Gibeon, Beth-horon, and the ascent, the path that goes with that, Azekah here, and then also, so Makkedah is mentioned, but that's not a known location. But just what I wanted to show here and zoom in is that, look at these cities that are listed, and again, some of these are known places. There's also other places you'll see that you will know and be familiar with, like Gezer, Bet Shemesh is another one, Gath. So other places that you'll know. But again, getting that geographical level of detail that you can really step through some of this stuff on a map like this. Okay, so we're not going to talk about Northern Campaign just for time, but just wanted to give you a sample of that. Okay, so quickly, as time runs short, we're going to talk about the judges just for a moment. So the judges. So that third cycle list that you're going to have is the judges themselves. So with this slide, I want to put some of the names with them. Locations. So locations with some, we don't know. So like with Othniel, where the battles were going on, we do have some locational stuff mentioned about him, but it was like where he was from, and it was in some territory allotment text in Joshua, but not his Judges text in Judges. We have Ehud at Jericho and the fords of the Jordan in Moab. Deborah and Gideon, this is what we're going to hit in a moment with the Jezreel Valley. Jephthah, Gilead and Ammon, which is on the Transjordan side. If we're looking down the list to Samson, interacting with the Philistines, so he's going to be on the coastal plain of Israel. And then, and of course, Eli and Samuel being there in central Israel as well. And so what I want to go ahead and do, try to get to for time, is, and so I had a map. It's talking about some of those early judges and their locations. Ehud being there in Jericho, that was where his episode had taken place. But let's get down to Deborah and Barack. So with Deborah the judge, and then Barack in the story with her. So those events with them involve the Lord leading Sisera, which was the commander of Jabin's army, and Jabin being the king of Hazor, led them into the hands of Deborah and Barack. So more specifically, Sisera was led into the hands of Jael. And so if you remember that story, Jael was a little bit of a headache for Sisera because she drove a tent peg through his head. But pointing this out to say that part of this story unfolds in the shadow of Mount Tabor, which is in the Jezreel Valley. And so, again, as we mentioned before, Judges stuff going on in the Jezreel Valley, but lots of other stuff from this point forward going to be going on in the Jezreel Valley. And so we're going to look at a video. And that's just a map there showing Jezreel Valley, but you'll see this in the video coming up. So with this, so there's going to be some other things mixed in here as well, but mainly looking for the points about Deborah and Gideon, but some of the other stuff is good information as well. And I set the volume last night because I made sure this video works, so I think the volume's in the right place if it hasn't been moved. We'll see. Maybe it has been moved. If it has been moved, I put a pencil mark where the volume should be. How about it? We got volume? And the volume from the soundboard. Because with this, we'll really need the audio with it. So I'll tell you what, if we can't get that working, oh, there's our guy. So what we may do, so I may show this, we can go through this Wednesday night. I can cover a couple of other things here with some of the time, and actually I need to end early too to go get my daughter from class as well. But so we'll look at these Wednesday night with the videos of the Jezreel Valley. There's two of them that kind of help give a good summary of passes into and out of the Jezreel Valley and why this is such a critical central focal point in the area. So I don't know that we'll actually have time to get through all this, but we'll start through this a little bit. So this is the map work that I mentioned earlier. So, one thing I really haven't done up to this point has looked at any areas and distances and talked about how far some of these distances are from like a miles perspective. May have mentioned it in a few places, but also what some of the travel times would be. So if you have this map and you want to mark it, if not, if you just want to watch, and I don't know if you would want to actually draw arrows between this like I'm going to have on the screen, or if you just want to, just maybe make a note on the side. But you can see the distances I kind of wanted to point out here. So if we're talking about that traditional land of Israel extent, which is what this map shows, and we're talking about Dan to Beersheba, so it's about 146 miles. So that's roughly where those two cities would be. So as we get into heavy narratives here in the central area of Israel with invasion and conquest and judges, you can think about this this span of distance that that we're covering or could be covering up to. So about 146 miles straight line length. Now, if you actually do Google Maps on this, like if you're going to drive between them to get around, and one interesting note about this is a lot of the current roads there, especially main routes, they actually follow ancient routes. They were established a long time ago, and they just kept being the travel routes, and they eventually made their way into modern roads. So if you're actually going to drive around with Google Map directions, it would be more like 170 or almost 180 miles to make this trip. If you're going to do it in car, it's going to be about 3 hours if you're driving that today. So that's one distance. Another distance would be Jerusalem to Jericho. So that's about 15 miles. And if you're going to drive that today, so be about 24 miles on a drive, take you about an hour to do it. And so in modern day Israel, you're going from Israel into the West Bank. But that would be there. So Jerusalem, Jericho. Another place that we've already hit, a couple places, is Shechem and Hebron. So Shechem and Hebron are about 48 miles apart, just straight line. And so that's roughly there to there. And if you're actually driving, it's about 30 miles. For some reason, Google Maps wouldn't calculate the driving time on this. Not really sure why, but it didn't do it. You could do it by walking. So it's about 50 miles there that you're looking at. Okay, and then this next one that I found was interesting and just kind of drew it out on Google Maps because you're crossing country boundaries, so you wouldn't be able to drive it either. But if you're going from Kadesh Barnea area up over to just across Jericho, so just roughly snap that line there. And so that's about 130 miles. This first stint of it is right about 75 miles, and this next length is about 70 miles, and both of those would take about an hour and a half to drive. So combine that all together. If you were driving it, if you could, drive it all in one shot, you're looking at about 145 miles of actual on-the-ground distance, take you about 3 hours. Which, interestingly enough, is very comparable to Dan to Beersheba kind of distance, except, that would be running this way. And then at the last there, wanted just to give a feel for that Transjordan area that we've been talking about a number of times, the Z-Red to the Yarmuk. And so that's roughly about, and I actually, when I think I measured this, it was actually a little bit further south. So about 122 miles if you're going Z-Red to the Yarmuk. And if you're going to drive that one, it'd be about 160 miles. And most of that route hugs a modern road that would be next to the Dead Sea and just going up the side of the Jordan. It's about a 4-hour drive. Okay. So with that, so we'll pick back up with those videos Wednesday night. But as we wrap up the period of the Judges, Invasion and Conquest and Judges, so think about with the Judges. So you have the ones like Deborah and Barack. We talked about Jezreel Valley area. Some locations are not going to be known. Samson, coastal plain area. Eli and Samuel, going to be in the central Israel area. But that's going to kind of get us through, again, with the exception of what we'll cover at the start on Wednesday night. But then we'll be getting into the United Kingdom with that. All right.